Hi everyone! In this video, I'm going to be doing my September bullet journal spread. This month's theme is inspired by the Mid-Autumn Festival. The Mid-Autumn Festival is a holiday that's celebrated in many parts of Asia, including in China. The holiday is based off of the lunar calendar, so it lands on a different day each year, but it's usually on the day with a full moon. For the cover page, I'm drawing the moon goddess, who is actually a legend that goes along with the Mid-Autumn Festival. I'll tell you the story and the legend later on in the video, so make sure you stay tuned. Chang'e is the moon goddess who is often shown in many different artworks related to the Mid-Autumn Festival, and I often see her on the cover of mooncake boxes. So during the Mid-Autumn Festival, people usually get together with their family and have a family reunion and eat a meal together. We also eat mooncakes, which are a type of pastry that has many different fillings on the inside. It can be red bean, lotus seed, or even egg yolks, and the egg yolk filling is supposed to represent the full moon. Mooncakes are super delicious, and I hope you'll try them if you never had them before. So for the painting, I'm starting with two main colors to make sure not to overwhelm this cover page. I chose magenta and a warm yellow color for the moon. I decided to paint Chang'e, or the moon goddess, on the cover page, and she is often depicted as elegant and long black hair. This is the first time I've ever drawn a human on the cover page, and I'm not used to drawing people because I usually draw plants, objects, and simple designs. Since the Mid-Autumn Festival is often related to the full moon, I decided to draw a full moon on the center of the cover. When working with watercolors, I always work from light to dark, and I build up the layers as I go. Make sure you don't start with the colors that are too dark, otherwise you can't go back and layer more on top. I also wanted to make the dress translucent, so I decided to use light colors at first. Then I built up the colors and used darker colors to add the folds in the dress. Now I'm adding some darker colors to the moon to add some shading and make it look like the moon's craters. Now for the calligraphy. I decided to choose a very cursive, elegant font to match the theme. I used my black brush pen to write September, and I followed the curve of the moon. Now I'm drawing a rabbit in the corner. The white rabbit is also shown in many Mid-Autumn Festival artworks, and there's another story of how the rabbit got there, but I don't know what it is, so you can search it up if you want. Now I'm drawing some clouds on the bottom to fill in the empty space. In the top right corner, I'm adding some peonies to fill in the corners and add a nice border. Now I'm using a magenta brush pen to add some more details to the hanfu and to add some more contrast. I'm also outlining the whole figure with some fine liner pens to make it stand out more. Then I'll be using some brush pen to fill in the hair. Now I'm using a yellow brush pen to fill in the clouds to make it look less empty. I also decided to add a few finishing touches to the moon. For the peonies, I stuck with two colors and added a simple muted green for the leaves. I didn't want them to stand out too much since they're just supposed to be a simple border for the edges. Now I'm going to use this metallic gold paint to add some shiny details to the moon. I wanted to make the page have some more interest and make the moon look special. I also added some gold details to the hair and some other parts of the painting. And here's the final result. I'm super happy with the result and I love the metallic details. Now moving on to the calendar page. So for the calendar page, I decided to move outside since it was pretty nice out and I wanted to enjoy the sun. So this video was actually filmed in September 2022, so 1 year ago, but I didn't edit it until now, September 2023. So the dates on the calendar are a little bit different, but luckily the Mid-Autumn Festival is still in September this year, so it all works out. I'm starting with a light wash of color for the dress and for the moon on the top. I decided to add some darker colors after each layer dried. Make sure each layer is dry before adding darker colors on top, otherwise they might bleed into each other. For the moon on the top, I'm coloring it with a darker orange for some more details. I drew Chang'e at the bottom to make it look like she's on the earth and not on the moon yet. Stay until the weekly spread at the end of this video to hear a version of the legend. I left some spaces in between the lines of the notes box so I can draw some clouds on top. I drew clouds making sure they overlap with the calendar boxes to add some more depth. Then I just wrote September on the top left corner. I kept the same two colors of magenta and yellow throughout the calendar page, but I decided to add some light pink for the dates on the calendar boxes. Now I'm drawing some houses in black and white to add some more background details. I made sure not to draw too much attention to them by keeping the designs simple. After coloring in Chang'e's hair, I decided to draw the outline of the hanfu, and I made sure to add some gaps in between the lines to make it feel a bit more flowy and a little bit translucent. Now for the peony flowers. If you notice, peony flowers actually curl up a little bit, so to simulate this in the drawing, I added two lines around the edges so it has kind of a curled up bit on the edge of the petal. I also use cross-hatching and hatching, which are pen coloring techniques, to shade. To color the peonies, I used my brush pens, and I started with the lightest color first, which was light pink, and then I added the darker magenta color on top in between the petals for some shading. I also used a brush pen to add some more details to the dress. I also decided to add some decorative square border elements into the notes box to make it look more interesting. I outlined the calendar with a magenta brush pen to make it stand out. Of course, this theme wouldn't be complete without writing Happy Mid-Autumn Festival, so I had my mom help me write the characters since I don't know how, and since I don't know how, my stroke order wasn't correct or anything, so that's why it looks a little bit crooked. Finally, I added another few houses on the left side to finish the background. And here's the finished calendar page. I really like how this turned out. Now moving on to the first weekly spread. Now is the weekly spread where I write my daily to-do task for each week. For this page, I started by drawing the boxes and leaving some empty spaces at the bottom for the drawings later on. To make the boxes look a little bit more fancy, I added those same decorative square borders elements on the edges of the boxes. Now I'm going to tell you the legend of Chang'e. So there's many versions of this legend, and I didn't actually know the versions, so I looked them up online. I always just thought that she was just a lady with a rabbit on the moon, but it's a lot more complicated than that. So this version goes like this. So thousands of years ago, there were 10 suns in the sky, and it was way too hot and it was scorching the earth to death. So Chang'e's husband, who was a legendary archer, shot down all but one sun, saving the earth and all of its people. As a reward, Chang'e's husband got an elixir of immortality. He kept the elixir at home with Chang'e to keep it safe. But one day, Chang'e's husband went out and left Chang'e with the elixir alone at home. Then someone broke in and tried to steal the elixir. Chang'e quickly drank the elixir before the thief got it to prevent it from getting into the wrong hands. But right after she drank the elixir of immortality, she started to fly up to the sky. The elixir made her fly higher and higher until she reached the moon, where she would live forever as the moon goddess, with her white rabbit. And her husband was left behind and heartbroken. To show that he missed her, he put out fruit and cakes. So that was one version of the story, and it's pretty sad. But there were also other versions, and some versions say that Chang'e and her husband were already immortals living in heaven, and other versions say that when Chang'e's husband left the house with the elixir at home, Chang'e was too eager to become immortal again, and she decided to drink the elixir all by herself. So basically, Chang'e stole it. I prefer the more romantic version, but there are tons of more legends that you can probably look up online. There's also another legend for how the rabbit got up to the moon, but you can also look that one up if you want to know. For the painting, I decided to draw a moon in each picture to keep it consistent and to show how each picture is a separate scene in the story. I tried to make each scene only have the common elements in all the versions. Since there are so many different versions, I didn't want to focus on drawing the details of the story, and I wanted to show something that was common between all the legends. So I drew Chang'e's husband shooting down the suns, Chang'e drinking the elixir, and Chang'e floating away to the moon. I also decided to draw some peonies in the corners to fill in the empty space. Now I'm just adding dates and some finishing touches. And that's the first weekly spread. I'm super happy with this weekly spread, and it's my favorite weekly spread out of all of them. Now we're moving on to the second weekly spread. For the second weekly spread, I decided to only draw one drawing, and that is a picture of Chang'e on the moon with her rabbit. I decided to make the hanfu super flowy to make it look like she's flowing among the clouds. Again, I'm adding the peonies in the corner. Now I'm drawing some clouds all around the page on the top and on the bottom, but I'm making sure to avoid the places where the weekly boxes will be placed later. While drawing the weekly boxes, I actually made a ton of mistakes in the lines. So first of all, I didn't draw the bottoms of the lines evenly, so some of the pen marks actually didn't line up. And when I was outlining the boxes with my brush pen, some boxes were too short, so I had to extend it by one grid mark. So I ended up having a line at the bottom. But I didn't worry about that because I ended up fixing it later, and I'll show you how. For the hanfu, I decided to add a bit of a darker purple color this time to make it more interesting instead of just painting the whole dress pink. This adds some more variation and interest, but it still fits the theme. Face is really small this time, so I didn't add that much detail, it says 2 dots for the eyes and lines for the nose and mouth. That's why I avoided drawing her face the whole time throughout this entire theme because I didn't want to have to draw super tiny details. I ended up fixing my mistake in the lines by creating a magenta border at the bottom of each box. It actually turned out looking really nice. Moving on to the next one. For the next weekly spread, I wanted to keep it way more simple than my 2 previous ones. I was getting tired of drawing humans, so I just decided to draw the little white rabbit with the moon. I'd like to do all my weekly spreads in one sitting instead of doing one at a time as each week goes by. I tend to get busy and I'm also a procrastinator, so I just forget about doing the next weekly spreads and I just run out of them. So doing them all at once prevents me from waiting until I have to do the next weekly spread. It also helps me because I can write my tasks that come up in the next weeks. The peonies this time are a little bit more complex. Instead of just drawing them individually, I decided to add a long stem and have them growing off of the stem. I feel like this adds a nice border because it wraps around the edge of the page. For shading the peonies, I just use a technique called hatching, which is where you draw straight lines all in a row to add some more shading. Again, for the curled effect of the petals, I just drew 2 lines on the edges of the petals to make it look like it's curling over. On the weekly spread, you can see that there's a line separating the top half from a section on the bottom, and that line is to separate my school task from my home task at the bottom. Now I'm just using a white gel pen to write in the days of the weeks. The white helps it stand out against the magenta background. Then I'm filling in the bottom section of the boxes with yellow. I also added that same square design border on the edges of the boxes for some more detail. And that's it for this weekly spread. On to the next one. For this weekly spread, I decided to also keep it simple. I just drew a peony and a moon in the corner. I only drew a single peony this time because I wanted the focus to be on the moon and not to be too distracting. I was inspired to make this design by a bookmark I made a long time ago, and if you want to see how I made it, then check out this video. So I actually messed up a little bit on the moon. The yellow paint got smeared a little bit, so I tried to make a drip effect to try to fix it, but that didn't work either. So I decided to mix up some dark purple paint for the background to cover it up. I also added a bit of metallic silver into the paint to make it shimmery. Although the dark purple doesn't really fit with the theme colors, which are magenta and yellow, I needed something that wouldn't be the same colors as the objects on the page. So purple actually works out pretty well. While painting the background, I made sure to avoid the white spaces where the clouds would be. I also darkened up the purple paint with a little bit of bluish purple on the bottom. Again, I'm drawing the white rabbit sitting on one of the clouds. I made the clouds have a swirly pattern to make it look more mystical and like it's from a legend. Although the purple background wasn't part of the plan, it actually worked out pretty well because I think it looks quite nice. While coloring in the clouds, I made sure not to color the clouds completely yellow and to leave some white spaces on the edges. This will make the clouds look like they are white and not yellow because the yellow is just supposed to be the shadow, not the main color of the clouds. I'm adding the square design border inside the weekly boxes again. I'm also adding a quote to fill in the empty space at the bottom. I chose this quote because it was related to the moon. I really like the shimmery background of this weekly spread. Now it's time for the final flip through. Please give this video a like if you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.